I should have gone straight home after work. That thought haunts me even now, months later, like a bad taste you can't scrub out of your mouth no matter how hard you try. I should have just clocked out, climbed into my rusty Honda, and driven straight back to my empty apartment in Cedar Grove. But I didn't, and that choice changed everything. I'd been working at the Costco in Cedar Grove, Ohio, for almost 4 years. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid my bills while I scraped my way through community college. The store sat on the edge of town, a massive gray box surrounded by cracked asphalt parking lots and a ring of dying strip malls. By day, it was a madhouse. Rows of carts clattering, kids screaming, coupons waving in the air like flags of surrender. But at night, when the doors locked and the last carts were corralled, it was a different beast entirely. Graveyard shifts were the worst. People think stocking shelves sounds easy until they've lifted pallets of canned beans at 3 a.m. with a skeleton crew that can barely stay awake. It wears on you, your back, your knees, your mind. And on nights when the air conditioning cut out or the fluorescent lights buzz like hornets above your head, the silence could make you lose track of what was real and what was just your brain short-circuiting. That Friday had been hell. Inventory week. Anyone who's worked retail knows those words are basically a death sentence. Endless counting, endless rescanning, and managers breathing down your neck. By the time we finally closed, well past 11, I felt like a rag wrung dry. My feet were swollen inside my steel-toed shoes. My shirt clung to me with dried sweat, and my lower back burned like someone had shoved hot coals beneath my skin. But the worst part wasn't the exhaustion. It was knowing that when I got home, I'd walk into an apartment where no one was waiting. I was halfway through shutting down my register when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Yo, Ethan, we're hitting the Waffle Shack. You in?" I turned, squinting at the tall, lean figure leaning against the next register. It was Mason, one of the newer hires, always grinning, always cracking jokes that didn't land but made you laugh anyway. His ball cap was turned backward, dark hair spilling out in messy curls. Next to him stood Alana, arms crossed, ponytail damp with sweat, looking like she was one dirty dish away from losing her mind. I rubbed my eyes. "Man, I don't know. My body's wrecked." "That's exactly why we should go," Mason said, grinning. "We survived inventory week without killing each other." "That deserves pancakes," Alana snorted. "And coffee." "Buckets of it," I hesitated. The way you do when you know your body's begging for rest, but your brain whispers that silence will eat you alive. Mason and Alana weren't just co-workers. They'd become friends, people I trusted in a job where most faces blurred together. The idea of sitting alone in my dark apartment, reheating leftovers, staring at the wall until I passed out, that felt worse than the ache in my bones. "All right," I said finally, dragging a hand over my face, "but I'm not driving." My knees shot. "What happened now?" Alana asked, arching an eyebrow. "Training," I muttered. "Tweaked it during sparring class. Been limping like someone's grandpa ever since sexy," Mason teased. "Come limp into Waffle Shack with us. People will think you're mysterious." "Yeah, mysterious like a guy one step from a hip replacement," I shot back. They laughed, and just like that, the heaviness lifted a little. We locked up, waved goodnight to the overnight stock team, and pushed through the sliding doors into the thick summer air. Even after midnight, Ohio's humidity clung to your skin like a damp blanket. The concrete radiated heat, the sky glowing faint orange from the sea of streetlights. The Waffle Shack sat just off Highway 42, a squat building with flickering neon and a cracked parking lot. Half the sign was burned out, so it read, "Wallashake," which somehow fit the place better. The bell over the door jingled when we walked in, unleashing the smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee. A trucker sat hunched over his plate near the counter, and two older ladies whispered in a corner booth. The waitress, middle-aged, tired but kind eyes, waved us toward a booth in the center. I slid in, facing the door. Habit. Always face the exits. Mason and Alana sat across from me, already joking about who'd regret eating here in the morning. I half listened, scanning the room. Everything seemed normal enough. The hum of overhead lights, the faint sizzle from the griddle, the soft clink of dishes. The waitress, her name tag read Darla, came over with menus. What can I get y'all to drink? Coffee, Alana said immediately. Sweet tea for me, Mason added. Just water, I muttered, rubbing my throbbing knee. We ordered. For a moment it felt good. Normal, safe. The three of us decompressing after Hell Week. Laughter cutting through exhaustion. But then the bell over the door chimed again, and everything changed. Two men walked in. At first glance, they looked wrong. Both wore heavy hoodies, gray and black, pulled low over their faces. Hoodies. In the middle of a humid Ohio summer night, their movements were jerky, restless. One was tall and gaunt, his frame almost skeletal under the fabric. The other was shorter, broader, tattoos crawling up his neck like black vines. Their eyes were glassy, darting, like they hadn't slept in days, or like they'd been awake for all the wrong reasons. I've seen plenty of shady people working retail late at night, but something about these two twisted my gut into knots. They walked past us too slow, deliberate. Their heads turned just enough to glance at Alana and Mason. My chest tightened. They slid into a booth directly behind me, close enough that I could hear the vinyl creak under their weight. Not close enough to see without turning my head. I hated that. No line of sight. I leaned forward, voice low. Don't look now, but we've got company. Alana blinked. What do you mean? Two guys. Hoodies. Came in after us. They're behind me. Mason frowned. So? It's a diner. People eat. Yeah, I said quietly. Except they're not eating. Darla came back with our drinks, oblivious to the tension. Mason cracked a joke. Alana smirked, but I barely heard them. Every nerve in my body tuned to the booth behind me. The sound of ice clinking in a glass, a slow sniff, the faint tap, tap, tap of fingers drumming against Formica. When Darla passed by again, I risked a glance. Two empty water glasses, no menus, no food, just staring. The tall one drummed his fingers, eyes locked on Alana. The shorter one leaned back, grinning like he knew something I didn't. My stomach went cold. Finish quick, I whispered. We're leaving soon. Mason rolled his eyes. Paranoid much? Humor me. We ate fast. Or rather, they did. I barely touched my food. Every second stretched longer, heavier, until I felt like the walls themselves were leaning in. When I threw cash on the table and told Darla to keep the change, my limp was more obvious than ever. That's when I saw it. The shorter guy pointed at me slowly, then made a stabbing motion with his hand. The tall one grinned wider. My pulse spiked so hard it rattled my vision. We pushed out into the night. The air hit like a furnace, thick and suffocating. Jess, get to your car, I said automatically, realizing my mistake in correcting. Alana, get to your car. Mason, take my keys. Start mine. Lock the doors. What the hell's going on, Mustard? Mason asked, but something in my tone must have clicked because they moved fast. The diner door banged open behind us. Footsteps. Quick. I turned. They were there, hoodies still up, faces twisted into something feral. One reached into his pocket. The other licked his lips. I planted my feet, ignoring the scream in my knee. Hey, I barked. Back the hell off. For a split second, they froze. Then the tall one pulled something from his pocket, metal flashing under the streetlight. A knife. That was all I needed to see. I spun, dove into my car as Mason yanked the door open. Go! 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 I roared. The engine roared to life. Tires screeched. In the rearview mirror, they sprinted after us, one shouting something I couldn't hear over the pounding of my heart. We didn't stop until the highway swallowed us, headlights carving through the dark. My hands shook so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I texted Alana, who was already a few cars behind. You okay? A moment later. Yeah. WTF just happened? I stared at the screen, chest heaving. The truth was simple. If I hadn't listened to that gut feeling, if I'd ignored the warning bells, we'd be dead. And that thought still keeps me up at night. Story 2. I stared at my phone in the dark, the screen lighting up the cramped hotel room. It was 12:17 a.m., April 12th, Charlotte, North Carolina. I ran a finger through my hair, trying to will myself calm, trying to remember how I got here. All I could think was, tonight will change everything. I'm Morgan Tate. I was 24 then, working nights as a medical courier, delivering lab samples to hospitals across Mecklenburg County. My roommate, Jenna, had urged me the night before to unwind with friends because work had been nonstop. I was, in my own way, slipping. Long hours, stress, and yes, I was using pain pills more than I should. Not full-blown addicted, but enough to make things blurry sometimes. Jenna didn't know how bad it was. I kept a tight lid on everything. That night, I met up with two co-workers, Elena and Marcus, at a small lounge in South End. We drank dessert wines, talked about jobs, about what we hoped the next year would bring. I felt warm and safe, sort of cocooned by their presence until it was late, past midnight. They both had to get back to calls and deliveries, but I suggested stopping by Super Target just to grab snacks for the drive home, maybe something caffeinated. They laughed and said sure, they'd ride with me. Sometimes I think that laugh was a relief from the tension in my chest, a promise of something simple. The clock in the lounge said 12:45 a.m. when we piled into my old Toyota Camry. The streets were quiet but not empty. Storefronts closed, neon signs flickering, the occasional late-night U-Haul or a skateboarder weaving down a sidewalk. Marcus in the passenger seat yawned. Man, I could kill for a slice of pizza or something. Elena nodded off behind him. Super Target wasn't far. You know the kind of store that advertises open late, but really means we close soon, just barely still open. This one was weird. The main entrance was shut, but lights were on in the self-scan exit doors. Exit only after midnight posted. I thought maybe those were open for staff or deliveries, but a sign said 24-hour self-checkout section on the side wing. Probably for overnight workers, I figured. We pulled in. The parking lot was almost deserted. Two streetlights flickered on either side of the self-checkout entrance, their light patchy, making long, distorted shadows between parked vehicles. One light above the automatic door flickered like a sick heartbeat. I parked near the entrance. Elena bounced up and down in the back seat. "Are we sure this place is safe?" she whispered. "I'll go first," I said. I grabbed my purse, nodded to Marcus. "You ready?" Marcus nodded, already unbuckled. We stepped out, the cold air biting. I clipped the door shut. The hum of the parking lot lights overhead made everything feel distant, unreal. Inside, the store smelled of bleach and stale milk. Most aisles were darkened. Only the overhead fluorescents in the self-checkout wing and frozen food section were smart enough to be on. Elena's eyes flicked nervously to the edges of aisles. We grabbed a cart. I picked up some energy drinks, a bag of microwave nachos, a pack of ground beef and frozen vegetables. Elena picked junk food, Marcus healthy stuff. As I turned toward the dairy section, I saw him, a man late 20s, skinny, gaunt, wearing a soot-gray hoodie. He stood at the mouth of aisle 14, fiddling with his hands, pacing. His steps were uneven, like he couldn't decide whether to march or sneak. I paused, under-breathing. "Guys, I think someone's acting off." Elena muttered, "Probably just homeless, or, I don't know, on something." Marcus rolled his eyes. "Let's just check out and go." We pushed the cart down another aisle. Snacks, frozen dinners. Every time I passed a reflective surface, freezer glass, the big Target sign in the curbside pickup area glimpsed through windows. I caught that movement behind me, a figure ducking behind a shelf, only to reappear 2 seconds later at the end of another aisle. I felt a knot in my stomach twist tighter. At the checkout, I scanned items. Self-checkout, single lane open, one scanner. My hands trembled as I swiped my card. Elena was bagging, Marcus pulling items into the cart. The pale man from aisle 14 hovered just beyond the queue, watching. Not blinking, I swear. Just fixed. It made the hairs on my neck crawl. Then I heard a woman's voice, sharp, brittle. She was crying or shouting, I couldn't tell which. We hadn't noticed her before. She stormed from the frozen food section toward us, muttering, "You always look at me. You always..." Her hands clutched the hem of her sweatshirt, fingers white. Her nails dug grooves in the fabric. She passed close enough I smelled alcohol, maybe something much worse. "Elena, move!" I hissed. Marcus tensed and stepped back. The woman's eyes caught mine as she passed. She snarled. I felt blood rush to my face. I finished paying, grabbed the bags. Marcus pushed my cart forward. We headed toward the door. I told myself, keep calm. Almost there. Outside, I loaded groceries in. Marcus was reorganizing cooler bags. Elena stared up at the sky, trying to see stars behind the city's light glow. A few cars in the lot, mostly dark. The street beyond was nearly empty. Then I saw him. Man from aisle 14 strode into the lot. His pace was aggressive, no hesitation. The moonlight glinted off something in his hand. My breath stopped. "Get in," I said, voice breaking. Elena darted to the back seat. Marcus flung his bag into the trunk. I fumbled for the door handle, slid in, engine off. I had just shut my door when bang bang, the hood of the car thumped. Then again, windows rattled. "Open it," his voice raw. "You stole her purse." "Give it back." My heart nearly stopped. "What purse? What are you talking about?" "I didn't take anything," I shouted, halfway through a cracked window. "You saw her." "You waited till no one was watching," he screamed. His girlfriend, yes, there was a woman, ran behind him, circling us, claws at windows, yelling. Marcus leaned forward from driver's side. "Back off, dude." "You got the wrong people." "He saw you," the woman shrieked. "You stole it. Hand it over or I break this glass." I pressed my foot on the brake, jerked the car into reverse. Tires spun. In my rearview mirror, I saw the man shout something, throw his fist at the hood. The woman sprung into the passenger side of an SUV parked a few spaces away. The engine roared. He scrambled in after her. Headlights cut through darkness. "Go!" Marcus yelled, panic in his tone. I slammed the car into drive and gunned it out of the spot. The cold night air whooshed in through windows. I swerved out of the lot entrance. The SUV followed. It accelerated, horns blaring. Cut me off at the exit sign. High beams flashed, then off. On, then off. Blinding. I fought for control, for direction. Marcus leaned beside me. "Call 911. But I couldn't find my phone fast enough. It was buried under a grocery bag. Elena's panicked breaths came from the back seat. I made a sharp right onto a side street, tires squealing, then left. My palms sweaty, jaw tight. Every reflection in store windows, every car turning, I thought it was them. I slammed through a stop sign. No other cars. Heart in my throat. They reappeared. The SUV's headlights bluish, huge like failed stars. They tracked me faster now, closing in. I floored it, weaving onto Broad Street. Old storefronts, dusty pavement, shuttered shops. I passed a diner still open, neon 24-hour sign buzzing, but didn't stop. Couldn't risk it. Then I see it. Blue and white lights ahead. A Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department station. Small building. Quiet lot. Salvation. I veered toward its drive-through lane. My tires squealed under that turn. The SUV followed into the station lot. My chest felt impossibly tight. I parked askew, slid the car into park, slammed the doors. Marcus yanked out his phone. I reached for mine, hands shaking so badly I could hardly dial. The man sprinted after us, fist pounding on the driver's window, rain of threats pouring out. "You think you can mess with us? You stole what was ours. I'm going to break this." I held the phone, told the dispatcher everything. Light in his face. That police station sign, patrol cars visible, windows looking out. Something shifted. He glared. For a moment I thought he might charge the building. But then he paused, looked around, at the police cars, at the lit facade. His eyes flicked to me, then to the open lot exit. He threw a scream, dove back into the SUV, slamming the door. The engine revved. Tires ripped from pavement. They peeled out, tires chirping, and were gone, swallowed by darkness. Inside the patrol car minutes later, I sat wrapped in a blanket, Jenna's name in my trembling voice. Officers asked questions. I answered as best I could. No plate number. Description: male, female, SUV, angry, desperate. I didn't cry then, but later, watching sun bleed through my bedroom window, I did. The adrenaline drained, left emptiness and fear. Weeks later, I drove by a curve near that super Target sometimes, saw the flicker of lights, the shadows between store windows. I don't go there after midnight anymore. I don't go alone. Sometimes I wake sweating, remembering that voice, that pounding on the glass, the smell of burnt rubber and desperation. This is my story. I don't know what those people believed. They were high, drunk, convinced of something that didn't happen. All I know is that after that night, I changed. I changed my routes, my trust, my fears. And though the cold in my chest still flickers once in a while, I survived. Story 3. I never thought a trip to Costco would leave me looking over my shoulder for months, maybe even years. To anyone else, it would have been just another late-night errand. Nothing remarkable. But for me, that night became a memory I can't shake, one that slips into my thoughts when I least expect it. Back then, I was 24, living in Columbus, Ohio. I'd graduated the year before with a degree in psychology that I wasn't using in any meaningful way. Instead, I was working as an assistant manager at a small electronics repair shop inside Easton Town Center. It wasn't my dream job, not by a long shot, but it paid enough to cover rent on my one-bedroom apartment and keep some leftovers for groceries. My schedule was brutal. Long days, unpredictable shifts, always on my feet. By Friday evenings, I was running on fumes. Most of my friends were out drinking or hitting up parties. Me? I just wanted to stock up on food, go home, and sink into my couch. Costco had become my sanctuary. The giant aisles, the quiet hum of carts rolling, the weirdly comforting smell of cardboard and frozen food. It was where I could breathe. That Friday in late February, the air outside was brutally cold. The kind of Midwest cold that sneaks into your lungs and makes every inhale feel sharp. Snow hadn't fallen in a few days, but dirty slush still clung to the curbs. By the time I clocked out at 7:45 p.m. and drove the 20 minutes to Costco, the sky was pitch black. I pulled into the parking lot around 8:20. The yellow-orange lamps hummed above rows of cars, casting halos on the wet pavement. The place wasn't empty, families finishing their shopping, couples with carts full of bulk items, but it wasn't crowded either. Perfect. I grabbed a cart, tucked my coat tighter, and rolled through the automatic doors. Warm air and the familiar whoosh of industrial heaters washed over me. For a second, I felt safe. Calm. I started my usual loop. Produce first. Apples, bananas, a clamshell of spinach I probably wouldn't finish before it went bad. Then dairy, eggs, milk, yogurt. I was halfway through tossing a family pack of chicken into the cart when I noticed him. An older man, maybe late 50s, stood at the end of the aisle. He didn't have a cart, didn't even pretend to be shopping. Just stood there, hands in the pockets of a faded blue jacket, a gray beanie pulled low over his forehead. Our eyes met for half a second. He smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was too polite, too deliberate. I looked away, brushed it off. People look around in stores all the time. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe I was overthinking. I kept moving. But a few aisles later, when I reached for a case of bottled water, I saw him again. This time he wasn't across the aisle. He was on the same side, maybe 15 feet away, pretending to study a shelf of paper towels. Only he wasn't reading labels. His head was angled just enough that his eyes were on me. My stomach tightened. I told myself not to be paranoid. It was a public place. Cameras everywhere. Employees all around. What could happen here? Then he spoke. "Cold night, huh?" His voice was gravelly, like he hadn't spoken much that day. I forced a polite smile. "Yeah, pretty cold. I turned my cart and moved on." He didn't follow immediately. That almost made it worse, like he was pacing himself. By the time I hit the snack aisle, he was already there, leaning casually against the shelf halfway down. "You local?" he asked, voice too casual. Yeah," I lied. My heart gave a hard thump. "You look familiar. You work around here?" His eyes were sharp, too intent for small talk. I shook my head quickly. "Just visiting." That smile again. Slow, knowing, like he could smell the lie. I abandoned the snack aisle, steering straight toward checkout. My cart was full enough. I didn't care about the rest. As I bagged my items, the young cashier glanced at me. He couldn't have been more than 19. "You okay?" he asked softly. I forced another smile. "Yeah, just tired outside." The cold slapped me hard. My breath puffed out in clouds as I pushed the cart toward my car, which was parked far back in the third row. The lot was quieter now, fewer people, more shadows. Halfway there, I heard it, boots crunching on gravel. I glanced over my shoulder, blue jacket, gray beanie. My chest tightened. I ditched the cart by my bumper and fumbled with my keys, gloves making it clumsy. "Hey!" his voice called out, closer than I thought. I whipped around. He was maybe 10 feet away, hands still in his pockets, smile too calm. "You dropped something," he said, holding up. Nothing. His hand was empty. "No, I didn't," I snapped, yanking my car door open. "Don't be like that," he said softly, almost disappointed. I slammed the door shut and locked it just as he reached my bumper. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely start the engine. He leaned in, tapped his knuckles on the glass. "Pretty girl like you shouldn't walk alone at night." That was it. I floored it. The tires squealed as I shot out of the parking lot, heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. In my rear view, he stood there, hands still raised like he'd been about to knock again. I didn't drive straight home. I circled side streets for 20 minutes before finally pulling into my apartment complex. I parked 2 buildings away from mine, just in case. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in my apartment made me jump. The next day, around noon, my phone buzzed. It was Lauren, one of my coworkers at the repair shop. "Hey," she said, "some old guy's been coming by all morning asking for you. Says he knows you from Costco." My stomach dropped. "What did you tell him?" I whispered. "Nothing. Just said you weren't here. But he's weird. Came in like 3 times I left work early, paranoid the entire time that he was watching me. For the next week, I changed everything. Different parking spots, different routes home. I even asked friends to walk me out at night. Eventually, Lauren told me he stopped showing up, but I never saw him again. Not at Costco, not on the street. And that scares me more than anything, because if he's still out there, still thinking about me, I wouldn't know." Story 4. I was 8 years old when I learned that crowded places don't always mean safe places. At that age, I thought safety came with numbers. The more people around, the less chance anything bad could happen. I couldn't have been more wrong. It was early September of 2002, a Tuesday, warm but breezy, the kind of day when the sunlight felt golden and endless. I remember because school had just started back, and 3rd grade was still new enough to feel exciting. That afternoon, Mom picked me up in our silver minivan, her hair in a messy bun, and sunglasses perched crooked on top of her head. She looked tired, the kind of tired that showed in the slump of her shoulders, even when she smiled at me. "Ethan," she said as I buckled myself into the back seat, "we need to make a quick stop at Sam's Market before heading home. That okay?" I nodded eagerly. At 8 years old, I loved that store the way some kids loved amusement parks. The giant aisles, the towers of cereal boxes taller than me, the free samples. It felt like another world. The parking lot was jam-packed when we pulled in. Mom muttered under her breath about how it seemed the whole city of Charlotte, North Carolina, had picked that exact hour to shop. We parked farther away than usual. She reached for my hand before we crossed toward the sliding glass doors. "Don't let go, all right?" "This place is huge. I won't," I promised, bouncing on my sneakers. The blast of cold air and the hum of bright white lights hit us as the doors whooshed open. The smell of baked bread and cleaning polish filled my nose. Shopping carts clanged, conversations echoed, and somewhere in the distance a baby cried. We started down the aisles. I tugged at Mom's sleeve every few steps. "Can we see the books? Or the toys?" "2 minutes, sweetheart," she said, comparing jars of pasta sauce. "Let me just grab dinner things first." I remember staring up at the endless shelves, amazed by the size of everything. Freezer doors hummed like machinery, boxes of cereal leaned like towers, and the sheer number of people made my little head spin. And then, it happened. We turned into the canned food aisle. Mom let go of my hand for the first time that trip to reach for soup on the top shelf. That was when I noticed him. At first, I thought he was just another shopper, a man at the far end of the aisle pretending to browse. He wore a faded windbreaker zipped up to his neck, though it was warm outside. His beard was patchy, uneven, his eyes darting more than looking. He started walking toward me, slowly at first, then quicker. When he bent closer, his voice was low, too low for anyone else to hear. "Hey, buddy," he said, forcing a smile. "Want to see the toys with me?" My heart thudded against my ribs. Even at 8, I wasn't clueless. Mom had drilled it into me. Don't talk to strangers. Don't go with them. I shook my head fast, my mouth dry. I glanced at Mom, still comparing soup labels. The man leaned in more, his fake smile never reaching his restless eyes. "Come on," he whispered, tilting his head toward the end of the aisle. "Just for a minute. I'll show you something cool." "No," I whispered, then louder. "Mom!" He stiffened, shoved his hands in his pockets, and walked away as if nothing had happened, disappearing around the corner. I grabbed Mom's hand the second she turned back, clinging so tight my knuckles turned white. But I didn't tell her. Not then. She looked focused, tired. I didn't want her upset with me for wandering or overreacting. By the time she bought me a toy later as a treat, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Almost. We were heading toward checkout when I tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, I gotta use the bathroom." She sighed but smiled. "All right, be quick. I'll be right here in line." She pointed down the long corridor toward the restrooms at the back. I nodded and ran, sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. The hallway was quieter than the main store, the noise of carts and chatter fading behind me. I was almost at the restroom when a rough hand clamped over my mouth and yanked me back. It was him, the man from the aisle. His grip was iron on my wrist, his other hand pressing over my mouth so hard I tasted the dirt and sweat on his skin. My body went cold. My brain panicked. "Stay quiet," he hissed, breath sour against my ear. "It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you." But nothing about his voice said, "Okay." I kicked and thrashed, muffled screams dying against his palm. His wild eyes scanned the hallway, paranoid, hunting for witnesses. Then instinct took over. I bit down hard on the fleshy part of his hand until blood hit my tongue. He yelped, jerking back. His hand loosened just enough. I screamed. "Mom!" The sound echoed like thunder through the hallway. 2 employees stalking nearby froze, then came running. The man shoved me to the ground and bolted, vanishing into the maze of shoppers. I sobbed until the employees knelt beside me, asking if I was okay. My mom appeared seconds later, panic carved into her face. She dropped everything in the cart and wrapped me in her arms, crying harder than I'd ever seen. Security rushed to lock the exits, check the cameras, call the police. On the footage, they found him. He'd wandered the store for nearly an hour, never buying anything. He lingered near the toys, near the children's books, glancing at cameras like he hated being watched. But in the chaos after my scream, he slipped out, gone. The police searched, asked questions, took reports, but they never found him. That was 23 years ago. I'm 31 now. I live states away with a job and a life I've built. But still, every time I walk into a warehouse store, my chest tightens. The long corridors to the bathrooms still send chills down my spine. I can feel his hand again, smell his skin, hear his whisper. And now when I take my little niece shopping, I never ever let go of her hand, because I know what almost happened when I was 8. And I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't screamed. Story 5. I never thought working nights at Costco would change the way I looked at people or the silence of empty places. When I got the job, it seemed like a blessing. I was 27, broke, and drowning in student loans. My degree in communications had been a dead weight for almost 3 years. Applications, interviews, rejection emails, over and over until I gave up chasing career jobs and just tried to survive. That's how I ended up taking the overnight shift at the Costco in Aurora, Colorado. The store manager, a middle-aged guy named Mr. Parsons, gave me the pitch during the interview. 10 at night to 6 in the morning. Good pay, full benefits, fewer people to deal with. You'll mostly be stocking shelves, scanning shipments, and keeping the floor organized. It sounded perfect. I'd always been a night owl, and the thought of skipping customer drama appealed to me. My mom wasn't thrilled when I told her. "Marcus," she sighed over the phone, "places that empty at night. Don't they give you the creeps?" I laughed it off. "Mom, it's Costco, not a graveyard. Besides, it's safer than my old bar job." She hummed doubtfully, but I brushed it away. Back then, the warehouse felt almost peaceful. The first few weeks rolled by easily. We clocked in around 10 p.m., grabbed our handheld scanners, and split up the aisles. There was a rhythm to it. The low hum of fluorescent lights, the rattle of pallet jacks, the occasional laughter over walkie-talkies. We had a small crew. Jamie, a sarcastic guy in his 30s who'd been there for years. Rosa, a single mom who worked faster than anyone I'd ever seen. And Eli, a college kid picking up shifts to cover tuition. We'd joke, blast music from one earbud, and make time crawl. It wasn't glamorous, but there was camaraderie. For a while, I thought I'd lucked out. Until that night in November. It was colder than usual, even inside. I remember walking in, blowing into my hands and telling Jamie, "Feels like someone left the damn freezer open back here." He smirked, tugging his beanie down. "That's Dock 3 for you. Always colder near the loading bays. You'll get used to it." That night, Parsons had assigned me the back end, checking in a new shipment stacked near the emergency exit. Bulk snacks, paper towels, cleaning supplies. Easy work, but isolated. The rest of the crew was up front, working aisles 5 through 9. As I scanned barcodes, I noticed something. The corridor leading to the emergency exit was darker than usual. No big deal. Motion lights sometimes lagged. But the door, it wasn't fully closed. It was cracked open just an inch or two, enough for the yellowish glow of the parking lot lights to seep through. A cold draft brushed my face. I muttered, "Great. Parsons is gonna chew somebody out again." We'd been warned before. Those doors were alarmed, never supposed to be open. Last time, someone got written up for propping one open during a smoke break. I sighed, set down my scanner, and started walking toward it. My boots echoed on the concrete. That's when I froze. There was a man standing at the far end of the corridor. At first, I thought it was a shadow, but no. It was a figure. Tall, messy hair, arms hanging strangely low. He wasn't moving, just standing there, staring. My throat tightened. "Hey, employees only back here." No response. I tried again, louder. "Yo, you can't be back here, man." Stores closed, still nothing. He didn't flinch, didn't even shift his weight. Something about the stillness felt wrong, like he wasn't just standing, he was waiting. I reached for my radio. The moment my fingers brushed it, the man bolted. No words, no sound, just turned and sprinted down the side corridor, disappearing into the dark. Shit! My heart hammered. I yanked a flashlight from the shelf and gave chase. But when I reached the intersection of aisles, he was gone. Nothing but silence and towering shelves. I called security. 2 guards swept the back area. Found nothing. No forced doors, no alarms. They shrugged. Probably some homeless guy slipped in. Maybe. But the look in his posture, too still, too deliberate, haunted me. I tried to shake it off. 15 minutes later, I was restocking paper towels when I felt something wet on the back of my neck. At first, I thought, leak in the ceiling. But Costco roofs don't leak. I reached back. My fingers came away slick. Confused, I looked up. That's when I saw him. The man was perched on top of the towering shelf, crouched like some animal. His face was half hidden in shadows, but his eyes glowed wide, unblinking. His mouth hung slightly open, saliva dripping down toward me. My stomach turned. "What the hell?" I whispered. The shelf trembled as he shifted. Then, he lunged. I screamed, dropping my scanner and bolting down the aisle. Behind me, boxes crashed. Heavy boots pounded concrete. I fumbled for my radio. "Security! Dock 3, now!" I didn't look back until I reached the brightly lit main aisle. My lungs burned. My hands shook. I grabbed the steel rod we used to shift pallets, holding it like a weapon. By the time security arrived, the man was gone. The next afternoon, Parsons called me into the back office. His face was pale. "Marcus," he said quietly, "you should see this." On the screen, grainy black and white footage played. There I was, working in the aisle near Dock 3. Nothing unusual, until the corner of the frame. The emergency door. The man was there. He stood in the shadows, barely moving, for over an hour. Every so often, he'd lean forward, pushing the door open an inch, then pulling it back, like he was testing it. Then came the worst part. While I worked, he climbed. Not like a person struggling up metal shelves, but like something meant to climb. Smooth, fast, precise, like a spider. He crouched at the top, unmoving, watching, drooling. The footage ended when I ran screaming down the aisle. Parsons froze the frame. The man's face was barely visible, but what little showed didn't look right. His eyes too wide, his jaw slack, like he was grinning. The police said maybe a transient had slipped in, but no camera caught him leaving, no doors opened. It was like he vanished. 2 weeks later, I transferred stores. I still work nights, but never in a building that big, that empty, that's silent. And every time I pass an emergency door, I check twice. Because sometimes what you fear isn't outside, it's already in. Story 6, I always thought big box stores were safe. Bright lights, cameras tucked into corners, and families bustling around with carts stacked high. It never struck me as the kind of place where fear could live. Places like that felt ordinary, predictable. But I learned the hard way that safety is often nothing more than a comforting illusion. My name is Daniel Harris, and this happened 3 years ago in Madison, Wisconsin. At the time, I was 31, working as an accountant for a mid-sized insurance firm downtown. My life wasn't exciting, but it was stable. Most days looked the same. Wake up early, choke down a quick breakfast, endure traffic on the Beltline, and spend 10 hours staring at spreadsheets under buzzing fluorescent lights. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept a roof over my head. That particular Friday in late November had drained me worse than usual. The end of quarter numbers were due, and I'd spent the day drowning in coffee and paperwork. By the time I left the office, the sky was already dark, and the air had that sharp, icy bite that meant winter was coming fast. My fridge at home was practically empty. I'd been putting off a grocery run all week. That's how I ended up pulling into the Costco on Watts Road a little after 8:30 p.m. The parking lot was a sea of headlights and bundled-up shoppers, pushing carts piled with holiday goods. Cars glistened under the harsh, yellow glow of the lot's floodlights, their roofs slick with dew. I parked way out toward the edge. Prime spots were long gone. As I killed the engine, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister. "Emily, don't forget bottled water. Supposed to be a snowstorm Sunday." I smirked. Emily always worried about things like that. Inside, the store was warm, almost comforting. The smell of roasted chicken drifted from the deli, mixing with the faint sweetness of the bakery. The place was buzzing, families bickering over which snacks to buy, kids chasing each other around pallets of cereal, and couples eyeing big-screen TVs like they were choosing their next child. I grabbed a cart, exhaled, and muttered to myself, "Let's make this quick." Halfway through my list, chicken, frozen vegetables, coffee, and yes, bottled water, I noticed him. At first, he didn't stand out. Just a tall guy in a gray hoodie pushing an empty cart. His hood was up, shadowing most of his face. But what made me look twice was the way he moved. Too slow, too deliberate. Most people shop with a rhythm. Stop, grab, toss into the cart. But he just drifted. His cart stayed empty. His head tilted slightly downward, as if he didn't want anyone to get a good look. I told myself not to be weird about it. People shop differently. It's a big store, paths cross. Still, a cold little shiver traced my spine when I turned into the dairy section and saw him there too. And again near frozen foods. And again by the coffee aisle. Always with that same slow, quiet pace. Always within sight. I forced myself not to glance back too much. The rational part of my brain whispered, coincidence, just coincidence. After 40 minutes, I had everything I needed. I checked out, loaded my trunk, and was shoving my cart into the return rack when I saw him again. He was standing a few rows away, pretending to scroll his phone. Same gray hoodie, still no bags, no groceries, no purchases. My stomach tightened. I climbed into my SUV and locked the doors immediately. When I looked back through the windshield, he was gone. For a second, I laughed nervously. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Just some weird guy, nothing more. But then, as I pulled out, headlights flared to life 2 rows behind me. A gray sedan. The next 15 minutes were hell. Every turn I made, the sedan made too. I switched lanes randomly, so did he. My pulse pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I tested him, skipped my own street, took a long detour. He stayed right there. Finally, I remembered the BP station up by Gammon Road. Bright, busy, cameras everywhere. I pulled in fast, parked near the door, and bolted inside. The cashier gave me a side eye as I pretended to study the candy rack, but I didn't care. Through the window, I saw the gray car creep past, slow as a funeral procession, before disappearing into the night. I waited 10 minutes before daring to drive home. That night, I double-locked my doors. My hands shook so bad I could barely set the alarm. The fear faded. Work pulled me back into routine. I told myself it was nothing, just some random guy. The next Friday, though, my fridge was empty again. Against my better judgment, I went back to Costco. The moment I walked in, my throat went dry. He was there. Same hoodie, same empty cart, standing near the entrance like he'd been waiting. I froze. "Dan," a voice called. It was Chris, a coworker from my office, pushing a cart with his wife. Relief surged through me. We exchanged a quick nod. I almost begged them to let me shop with them, but I couldn't bring myself to sound paranoid. Instead, I forced a smile, grabbed my own cart, and hurried down the nearest aisle. But no matter where I went, he was never far behind. By 9:15, the store was thinning out. Families were leaving. The chatter and clatter of carts grew sparse. The aisles stretched longer, quieter, and he was still there, closer now. I made the mistake of cutting into the freezer section, hoping to lose him. The humming freezers lined both sides, their glass doors fogged. The aisle was empty, colder, quieter. I gripped my cart tighter. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, behind me. I turned. He was only a few feet away now, hood shadowing his face. "Can I help you?" My voice cracked like brittle glass. He didn't answer, just breathed. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, "You shouldn't have left that night." My blood ran cold. "What?" I whispered back. That's when he smiled, just barely, and reached into his hoodie. Instinct took over. I shoved my cart as hard as I could. It slammed into him, and I bolted. My sneakers squealed on the polished floor. "Help!" I screamed, tearing down the aisle, lungs burning. I burst past self-checkout, where a handful of stunned employees froze, staring. One shouted, "Hey! What's going on?" Before I could answer, a hand clamped down on my shoulder. I whipped around, ready to fight. It was a security guard, barely older than me, eyes wide. "What's happening?" he asked. I spun back toward the store. The man in the gray hoodie was gone. Police came. I gave a statement, trembling so badly I dropped the pen twice. They searched the store, the parking lot, nothing. Then one of the officers said something that froze me worse than the freezer aisle. "Sir, we checked the security footage. There's no one following you." I blinked. "What? That's not possible." He was right there. The officer exchanged a look with the guard. "All we saw was you." Running, screaming I couldn't breathe. That night I sat in my apartment with every light blazing, staring at the door. I know what I saw. And to this day, when I'm in a store and the aisles grow too quiet, I still feel it. The weight of unseen eyes, the sound of slow footsteps. Because some shadows don't stay in the dark. They follow you home. Story 7. I never thought a quick stop for pizza would change the way I look at people forever. Back in the summer of 2017, I was in that weird gap between the end of high school and the start of college. Everything felt uncertain, like my life was about to begin, but I had no idea what that actually meant. My parents kept reminding me that this was the last real summer of freedom before responsibility started piling on. And in a way, they were right. At the time, my world revolved around two people, my best friends since middle school, Ethan and Caleb. The three of us did everything together: sleepovers, basketball at the park, late-night video game marathons. That summer, we had made a pact to keep each other accountable, to actually stay active instead of wasting away inside like we usually did. Every morning, without fail, we met up at Summit Gym in our town of Maplewood, Ohio. It became a routine. Wake up at 7:30, meet at the gym by 8, put on a playlist that was equal parts Drake and old punk bands, and push each other to lift heavier, run faster, sweat more. Ethan was always the competitive one, flexing in the mirror even when he barely had a pump. Caleb was quieter, more methodical, counting every rep and logging it in an app. Me? I was somewhere in between, just glad to have them by my side. After workouts, we usually grabbed something light, smoothies, bagels, sometimes a greasy breakfast platter if we felt like undoing all our progress. But one Tuesday in late July, Ethan tossed out a different idea as we were leaving the gym, still drenched in sweat. "Yo," he said, wiping his forehead with the bottom of his shirt. "You guys ever had Costco pizza?" Caleb laughed. "That's random as hell. Why? I swear it's legit. Like, no joke, some of the best pizza you'll ever eat. My cousin took me once in Cleveland. Huge slices, like bigger than your head." "Dirt cheap, too," I raised an eyebrow. "Don't you need a membership for that?" Ethan grinned, that cocky smirk he always had when he thought he was smarter than the rest of us. "Not if you know how to get around it. I've gone in twice without one. Just walk in behind somebody who does. Nobody ever checks that hard." Caleb shook his head, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. "Bro, you're gonna get us banned before we even start college." "What's the worst they'll do?" Ethan said, shrugging. "Tell us to leave. Big deal. We're hungry, and I'm telling you, this is worth it." I hesitated. The idea of sneaking into Costco for pizza felt dumb, almost childish. But that was the summer vibe. Doing things just because, chasing memories, before we all went our separate ways. Caleb caught my eye, then gave the smallest shrug, like why not? "Fine," I said, trying to sound reluctant. "But if we get kicked out, I'm pointing at you, Ethan." He grinned wider. "Trust me, you'll thank me later." The drive over was pure summer. Windows down, hot air rushing in because Ethan's old Honda barely had working AC, music blasting so loud people in other cars were glancing over. We sang along badly, shouted over each other, talked about dumb high school stories, and where we thought we'd be 5 years from now. For a moment, life felt untouchable. The Costco sat on the edge of town, a giant beige warehouse surrounded by an ocean of parked cars. Families were pushing carts loaded with bulk everything: water packs, toilet paper towers, cereal boxes the size of toddlers. Walking in with nothing but wallets and gym bags, we definitely stood out. "You sure about this?" Caleb muttered as we approached the sliding doors. "Relax," Ethan said, walking with exaggerated confidence. "Just stick close. Look like you belong." The automatic doors whooshed open, a wave of icy air conditioning hitting us like heaven. My heart was beating way too fast for something so small. We tucked ourselves right behind a family of 4, slipping past the entrance without anyone blinking. "See?" Ethan whispered, grinning. "Easy." The food court was just ahead, the smell of pizza and hot dogs mingling with the faint scent of detergent and cardboard. People chatted in low hums. Carts rattled. Registers beeped in the distance. For a moment, it felt like he was right. This was harmless. "Okay, I'm sold," Caleb said, chuckling. "Best idea you've had all month." We didn't make it to the line. Out of nowhere, a man stepped in front of us. He wore a red Costco polo, tucked neatly into black pants. Clean-shaven, mid-20s maybe, with a friendly smile that felt a little too polished. "Hey guys," he said, voice casual. "Can I see your membership cards?" Ethan froze for half a beat before forcing a laugh. Yeah, about that. We were just hoping to grab a pizza. We don't have memberships." The man tilted his head, still smiling. "Normally, I can't let anyone buy food without one. But you know what? I can set you up with a guest pass for today. Super easy. Just follow me." Something about his tone put me at ease. He sounded like an employee just trying to help. Ethan jumped at the offer. "Sweet. Thanks, man." The guy led us away from the food court, past aisles stacked high with snacks, electronics, clothes. I expected him to take us to a service desk, but instead he stopped at a plain gray door along the side wall. He swiped a card and pushed it open. "Just through here," he said, that same smile on his face. We followed. The hallway inside was narrow, buzzing fluorescent lights above, concrete floor echoing under our sneakers. Something about it felt wrong. Too quiet, too far from where customers were supposed to be. "Uh, where's the desk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Almost there," he said without looking back. At the end of the hall, he opened another door. The room beyond was pitch black. A wave of stale, sweaty air drifted out, like a locker room no one had cleaned in months. "Go ahead in," he said. "I'll flip the lights." Ethan, fearless as always, stepped inside first. Caleb followed. My gut screamed at me not to, but the man was waiting, eyes on me. I stepped in. The lights flicked on. 5 men stood inside. Big guys, all wearing black hoodies and ski masks. None of them looked like employees. They weren't holding weapons, but the way they turned to face us was predatory, calculated. "What the hell?" Ethan started, but the man who led us here stepped in and shut the door behind him. He spread his arms, blocking the exit. "Do what they say," he said calmly. For a heartbeat, the room froze. My mind screamed, "This isn't real." Then Ethan lunged. He slammed his shoulder into the man at the door, knocking him back just enough. "Run!" he shouted. Instinct took over. Caleb and I bolted, sneakers pounding the concrete. Shouts erupted behind us. Heavy footsteps thundered after us. My chest burned, heart slamming so hard I thought it might burst. We barreled down the hall, burst through the gray door, and exploded back into the crowded store. Shoppers turned to stare as 3 sweaty teenagers sprinted past. We didn't stop, didn't look back. We tore through the parking lot, dove into Ethan's Honda, and peeled out so fast tires screeched. My hands shook uncontrollably. Caleb sat in the back, gasping, clutching the seat. Ethan gripped the wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. 10 minutes later, we pulled into a gas station and just sat there, silent, trembling. "What the hell was that?" I finally whispered. No one answered. We never reported it, never told anyone. The story died between the 3 of us. To this day, I don't know what those men wanted or what would have happened if Ethan hadn't acted. But every time I hear someone rave about Costco pizza, my stomach twists. Because I know what's hiding behind those doors. Story 8, I always thought of myself as careful. Not paranoid, just aware. The kind of person who double-checks the locks before bed, who walks with keys between their fingers when crossing a dark lot, who always notices the way people look at me a second too long. That habit came from my dad. He was a police officer in a small Midwest town where the biggest crime was usually teenagers sneaking beer into the lakefront park. He used to tell me, "The world feels safe until the second it's not." Stay ready, I carried that advice with me, even after I moved away to Ohio. But nothing prepares you for the night you realize just how thin the line between ordinary and terrifying really is. It started like any other Friday. I was 27, working as an account coordinator at a mid-sized marketing firm in Dayton. Nothing glamorous. Just endless calls, managing clients who wanted the moon on a shoestring budget, and deadlines that stacked higher than the paper piles on my desk. Fridays were usually a lifeline for me. Finish the week, grab takeout, collapse into bed. But that day dragged like wet cement. We had back-to-back meetings. My boss nitpicked everything. I didn't even leave the office until nearly 7 p.m., long after most people had cleared out. By then, my eyes burned from fluorescent lights, and my back ached from hours at the desk. I should have just gone straight home. My couch was calling, but my fridge, empty. No milk, no bread, no eggs, just half a jar of pickles and a sad wedge of cheese that had grown something fuzzy. I sighed in my car, debating drive-through versus groceries. Eventually, I convinced myself, be an adult, buy food, save money. That's how I ended up at the Costco in Beaver Creek. The sky was bruising into twilight when I pulled into the lot. A streaky sunset painted the horizon pink and gray. The front of the building glowed, doors yawning open and shut as families pushed carts piled high. A kid cried somewhere, the sound echoing strangely against the walls. I parked farther back than I liked. It was crowded near the entrance, and by the time I found a spot, I was practically at the edge of the lot near a flickering light pole. I muttered, "Great," under my breath, but shrugged it off. Inside, the smell of rotisserie chicken and baked bread hit me. Costco always hummed, register beeps, chatter, carts clattering against polished floors. Somehow the chaos was comforting. It was ordinary. I grabbed what I needed: bread, eggs, frozen dinners, some fruit, a new shampoo brand I hadn't tried before. I even paused for a sample, mini meatballs in plastic cups. At checkout, I noticed how thin the crowd had gotten. The cashier told the older couple in front of me, "We close at 8, folks." I glanced at my phone. 7:46 p.m. Perfect. By 7:55, I was wheeling my cart toward the sliding doors, receipt in hand. That's when everything shifted. The sky outside had deepened into full dusk, that eerie in-between where light fades but true dark hasn't settled. The parking lot looked emptier, the far rows swallowed by shadow. A cold wind had picked up, sharp with the smell of asphalt and car exhaust. My car sat alone in its row. I hated how far away it seemed. I muttered, "Should have parked closer." As I loaded bags into my trunk, I kept my head down, rushing. I was thinking about leftovers, Netflix, the comfort of home. My fingers shook slightly from the cold. Then I heard it, breathing, behind me, not mine. "Excuse me," a man's voice said. Every nerve in my body went tight. I turned slowly. He stood about 6 feet away, mid-40s, maybe older. Greasy hair slicked to his forehead. His face pale, almost waxy, deep lines carved around his mouth. His shirt, once gray, was stained. His jeans sagged at the knees. But it wasn't just his appearance. It was his eyes. Dark, darting, but fixed on me with a strange hunger. "Do you, happen to have jumper cables?" he asked. For half a second, relief flickered. Car trouble. Harmless. Maybe. But something felt wrong. His tone wasn't frantic, not like someone desperate to get home. It was casual. Too casual. I forced a polite smile. "Sorry, I don't." He tilted his head, studying me. "You sure? You look like the kind of person who keeps things organized. Maybe check your trunk?" That sentence hit me wrong. Who says that to a stranger? My pulse quickened. "No," I said quickly. "Really don't have any." I turned back to my groceries, shoving bags faster into the trunk. My hands trembled. Then I felt it. His presence closer. The sour stench of sweat and cigarettes drifted over me. "What's that smell?" he murmured. I froze. "What?" "Your hair." His voice dropped, low, almost playful. "Shampoo. Smells. Amazing." Before I could react, he leaned in, too close, and inhaled near my head. Every muscle in me locked. My skin crawled. My brain screamed, "Move!" I spun around, voice cracking. "What the hell are you doing?" He grinned, teeth yellow, eyes glittering. "Didn't mean to pry. Just nice smell. Wonder if they sell that in there." My stomach turned. I clutched my keys, fumbling them into my hand like a weapon. Then his words cut through me like ice. "They sell underwear in there too, right? Why don't you show me the kind you're wearing? My wife's about your size." The world narrowed. My hands went numb. My breath came ragged. "Back off," I snapped, louder than I expected. He only grinned wider. I slammed the trunk, dove into my car, hit the lock button twice. My heart hammered as I shoved the key into the ignition. Through the windshield, he stood there smiling like it was all a joke. Then he walked off. Not into the store, not toward the exit, into a dark blue sedan parked a few rows back. When I pulled out, my stomach dropped. His headlights clicked on. He followed. The moment I turned onto the main road, his car slid behind mine. Not tailgating, not rushing, just steady, lingering. "No, no, no," I whispered, voice shaking. I tried turns. Right, then left, weaving through residential streets. Every time his headlights followed. Not too close, not too far. Like a predator. I dialed 911, hands trembling. No signal. Dead zone. Come on," I begged the phone. But nothing. Panic clawed at my throat. If I drove home, he'd know where I lived. My father's words echoed in my head. "Don't go home if you're being followed." Then I remembered. The police station. 2 miles away, downtown. I pressed harder on the gas. The sedan mirrored me, speeding up when I sped up, slowing when I slowed. My vision blurred with tears. My breath came in ragged gasps. Streetlights flashed overhead like strobes as I hit 55, then 60. Cars honked when I blew through a red light, but I didn't care. His headlights grew closer, too close, flooding my rearview mirror with white. "God, please," I whispered, gripping the wheel until my knuckles ached. Then I saw it, the glowing blue sign. "Police station, 1 mile." I floored it. The building appeared like a beacon, floodlights blazing. I swerved hard into the lot, tires screaming. My car lurched to a stop right by the entrance. I saw his brake lights flash at the road. He slowed. My heart froze. Would he follow? He hesitated. Then turned down a side street. Gone. For a second, I couldn't move. My whole body shook. My hands were welded to the steering wheel. Finally, I stumbled out, legs weak, and pushed through the glass doors. The warm fluorescent lobby nearly blinded me. A uniformed officer looked up. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I tried to answer, but my voice broke. He followed me. From Costco. He sniffed my hair. They sat me down. Water, questions, a notebook. My words tumbled out in broken pieces. Greasy hair, gray shirt, blue sedan, headlights always behind me. They pulled security footage from Costco. 2 days later, an officer called. They'd found him. His name was Russell Harker, 46, a registered sex offender, recently paroled. Multiple charges, stalking, harassment, indecent exposure. He wasn't supposed to be within 10 miles of that area. "You're lucky," the officer told me gently. "It could have ended much worse." But I didn't feel lucky. Now every night after work, I scan mirrors. I check corners, shadows, headlights behind me. Every squeak of tires makes my stomach drop. And sometimes when the house is too quiet, I swear I can still smell him, that rancid mix of cigarettes and sweat clinging to the air like a curse. I haven't gone back to Costco since, and maybe I never will.